weather. So we shift, I think, our first session for today, for tomorrow, to this afternoon, and so that we can use tomorrow morning the very sunny and enjoy the very sunny Rhodes with Aron as a guide. So, yes.
Annette, I'm not sure we need a mic here, but it's off anyway.
It's off?
Or is it just for the recording?
Just, it's now better? I would like to use a micro. Now, I think now it's, yeah, that's good. So, and now I leave Claudia the stage just to say hello, and then I'm going to introduce you a little bit to the idea of this workshop. Yes.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Good morning, everybody. All right. Now, is that okay? I can.
Yeah, I just.
Now.
But this would be, I think, more comfortable for you.
Oh, yeah.
It's okay. I'll speak for 2 minutes.
No problem.
Talk. So, good morning. So, on behalf of the Jewish community of Rhodes, I warmly welcome you to the island and to the conference Echoes of Rhodes, Sephardic Culture in the Greek Mediterranean World. So Rhodes has been on the crossroads of cultures for a long time, and for centuries, Sephardic Jewish life flourished here. And although our community was nearly destroyed during the Holocaust, its voice still resonates today through memory and music, as we're going to hear later, traditions, and this conference gives echoes, new life to those echoes. And I want especially to thank the organizers, Annette Martini and Marcelo Benveniste, and all the participants for coming here and bringing your work and your presence. And may these next days inspire fruitful dialogue. Now, today, obviously, you all know that it's the International Day of Commemoration in the memory of the victims of the Holocaust. And we remember our ancestors by saying the same prayers, singing the same melodies. And I just want to take a minute to remember all who had perished 80 years ago. Just a minute of silence. Okay. Well, thank you. We will never forget them. So let's start with Aron, I think. Or no, sorry, not Aron. Annette, you coming back to speak? I got it all. wrong.
Marcelo.
And Marcelo too. All right. Well, thanks so much.
So maybe it's very easy to put it up and down. So yeah, good morning, dear speakers, dear colleagues, dear guests, dear friends. It is a great pleasure for me to welcome you warmly to our workshop Echoes of Rhodes. I'm really very delighted to see you all here today. Some of you have traveled considerable distances to be with us today, and I'm very grateful that you have taken the time and effort to share your expertise and your time and your perspectives with us. So therefore, I would like to begin by thanking you for accepting our invitation and for joining us here in the Rhodes Hotel. At the very outset, I would also like to express my profound gratitude to Claudia Ristis and Carmen Cohen. For many years, they have been dedicated to fostering Jewish life on Rhodes and to creating a space of remembrance and research devoted to the long and moving history of the Jewish community on this island. So thank you, Claudia and Carmen, for your openness to what was initially a rather tentative idea of Marcelo and me, to trace the history of an ancient Torah scroll and its previous owners here in Rhodes. Over the past year, this idea has evolved and has eventually resulted in what I think is a quite rich workshop program with a wide range of perspectives. So allow me to say a few words about the moment that sparked the idea for this workshop. About 2 years ago, in the context of our research program. Yes.
Just try for a second.
Ja. Ja. Geht aber gar nichts. Ist das stört hier vorne so. Maybe I take it more distance. Yeah. So about 2 years ago, in the context of our research project To Roll, which examines the production of ritually pure Torah scrolls and tefillin from both theoretical and practical perspectives, I came across a short online article, and it reported on a remarkably old Torah scroll written on the Iberian Peninsula, approximately 800-700 years old. According to the article, the scroll reached Rhodes after an eventful odyssey and is today housed in the Holocaust Museum in Buenos Aires. Given to our project's particular interest in the materiality of medieval artifacts, I did not hesitate to contact the museum. And exactly 1 year ago, I was warmly welcomed in Buenos Aires by Serafina Perry and the entire team, whose enthusiasm for the project, for our research, and for the left a really lasting impression on me. One conversation in particular with Marcelo Benveniste and Serafina and another colleague from the museum, I don't remember her name, proved especially stimulating. They told me the story of the scroll's miraculous rescue, a story inseparably linked to the most devastating catastrophe the Jews of Rhodes experienced. In this context, I learned about the Turkish consul Selahattin Ülkümen, who courageously chose to protect the Turkish citizens from Nazi persecution, regardless of whether they were Muslim, Christian, or Jewish. When the raids began, he invoked a neutrality agreement between Germany and Turkey, insisting that Turkish citizens were entitled to full protection and should neither be imprisoned nor deported. While the vast majority of the approximately 1,800 Jews of Rhodes were deported and murdered in Auschwitz, some 1,000 miles from the island, Selahattin Ökümen succeeded in ensuring that 40 to 50 Turkish Jews were allowed to remain on Rhodes. The Torah scrolls and other liturgical objects of the Sephardic community were likewise preserved through the intervention of Sheikh Suleiman Kaziloglu, I'm not sure I pronounce his name right, the Grand Mufti of the Muslim community on Rhodes during the German occupation and the Second World War. He concealed the Torah scrolls within the Murad Reis Mosque, hiding them beneath the pulpit, a location German troops would almost certainly not have searched. I also came to understand the profound significance that this Torah scroll still has for the Sephardic community in Buenos Aires, the descendants of the surviving Jews of Rhodes, and the remarkable personal commitment with which community members preserve and sustain Sephardic traditions, including the beautiful Ladino songs which continue to be performed and cherished, as we heard yesterday in the synagogue already. Marcelo and I ultimately agreed that the story of this scroll deserved to be told within a broader context against the backdrop of Sephardic culture on Rhodes and other Greek islands. So this conviction lies at the heart of this workshop. Thus, over the next 2 days, we will explore Sephardic written culture, follow Jewish traces across the island, listen to its musical heritage, and trace the migration routes to Arjentina, where some of the grandchildren of the Jewish community of Rhodes live, and some of them are with us here today. So finally, I would like to express my deepest thanks to Marcelo, who introduced me to this history of this small and yet remarkable community, and whose support was indispensable in preparation for the workshop. So one thing is certain, without Marcelo we would not be here today. So now I wish all of us a stimulating, enriching and inspiring workshop. And I think Marcelo would also say.
Let's try it.
Oh, yeah.
I think we have to do.
Oh, well.
No.
Maybe with more distance?
No, because no, the sound is high. No, let's try later with the person in charge. Yes.
Should I tell the receptionist?
No, in the bar.
In the bar?
Always. No, I only.
You don't need it.
No, I only just to say hello and welcome everyone. Thank you, Annette. All what I have to thank will be tomorrow in my presentation. Just only want to say that this is our goal, is to spread the history of the Jews of Rhodes. When we put in an offset or a story in a website or an offset in an exhibition, we look for the people interested in that and understand the history, learn the history, and we always say the bad part of the history never again in the war. We want a war with peace, of course. Just only want to say that. Also, we are live online in our Sefarad channel in YouTube. We have an organization, I don't say that. We have, with my wife, Liliana, we have an organization, the Centro Cultural Sepharad Sephardic Center, and a website eSefarad. We 17 years, I don't know how much. We have this project to spread the culture of the Sephardim, and especially the history of the Jews of Rhodes. And okay, it's online, all the lecture will be online and remain in our channel, youtube.com/eSefarad. Okay, welcome everyone. Thank you again, Annette, for your trust. And okay, let's start. Thank you. And excuse me my English. I know that it's not so good.
Katarina will introduce you a little bit.
Okay, yeah, it's my pleasure to introduce you to Aron Hasson, who is one of the pillars of this Rhodes community, both here and abroad. He started getting involved as a third-generation Rhodesian in Rhodes Jewish history as a student at the University of California in Santa Barbara, when he was writing an article or a little essay on the history of the Jewish community, and from then on, his work and his research has gone further and further. In the 1990s, he was one of the founders of the Jewish Museum here, which started off as a little exhibitions of photographs and some little Judaica items, and it soon turned into a permanent exhibition, and will later also visit the museum. He also founded the Jewish Historical Foundation of Rhodes, which helps support research about the history of the Jewish community. And he is a lawyer by training, running the Hasson law office in Los Angeles, dealing with immigration law, and at the beginning of his career, which I found also really fascinating, your involvement with immigration law also perhaps is also influenced by your own story of your family moving from Rhodes to America. For some time, you worked at the Jewish Family Service, dealing with religious and political asylum cases, and sure. No problem at all. And what he also does is he writes a lot about Sephardi culture and Rhodes history. And there's a Rhodes Jewish calendar which I saw online, and he also contributes regularly to the Sephardi Community magazine. And yes, together with his wife, he's going to talk us through the history of the Jewish community in Rhodes and showing us some lovely and fascinating pictures. So I'm really looking forward to your presentation.
Oh. So it's a bit tricky, but it works.
looks like. He's preparing the batteries for the microphone, so I'm going to start right now. We'll start now. So good morning, everyone. My name is Aron Hasson, and I'm the founder of the museum in Rhodes here, and also the nonprofit organization that was just mentioned. Thank you. And that was done in 1997. And I'm delighted to be here today to make this presentation. And many thanks to start with Annette Martini, and also to Marcelo and Liliana Benvenisti, and to Claudia Restis and Carmen Cohen for organizing this workshop activities. To my fellow presenters and guests joining us today via video platforms, a warm welcome to all. And you can hear now? Okay.
Oh, that's perfect. Thank
Okay,
you.
great. Thank you. Thank you very much. Today, January 27th, is the International Holocaust Remembrance Day, 81 years after the liberation of Auschwitz. As we remember the lives, cultures, and histories that the Holocaust sought to erase, we are dignifying, and reaffirming the stories of the victims and the survivors for which this workshop matters. My topic is Jewish life in Rhodes. It's a very personal and lifelong passion inspired by my 4 grandparents who were all born and lived in Rhodes and eventually settled in the United States. Their recollections were so vivid, prompting me to travel to Rhodes for the first time in 1975, where I reimagined their lives on the streets they once walked and lived on. Because of their fondness for their heritage, I was inspired to contribute whatever I could to preserving the Jewish history of Rhodes. Fortunately, through the years, I've met individuals who shared in that enthusiasm. As you can picture, Jewish Rhodes is broad and warrants extensive coverage. There are hundreds of images and artifacts to discuss, so to accommodate my allotted time, I selected a few. Otherwise, we would be here for hours. So to start, the overview covers the Jewish community of Rhodes, La Juderia, its life and traditions, and the artifacts and photographs. First, the Jewish community of Rhodes. I would describe it as a close-knit community where each member can trace their connections to one another, either by blood or by marriage. This photo, let's see, didn't quite get to that. See if the slideshow works. If not, we'll make do. Doesn't. Well, hold on. I'll pause for a minute.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, just a minute.
Sure.
It's okay. I'm sorry. No. So we try to get it.
I go for the computer here.
Sorry. No. Just one.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll come back.
Yes. No.
This looks right at the right slide. So.
Yes.
Okay, so this is the first slide. I would describe the Jewish community of Rhodes as a close-knit community where each member can trace their connections to one another, either by blood or marriage. This photo illustrates close family ties. We have 4 families, the Alcanas, the Leons, Philosophes, and Levis, having a picnic together at Rodini Park, also known as Zimbuli, on the last day of Passover in 1936. The next slide is the brief history of the Jewish community of Rhodes. In the given handouts, we included this information for reference, highlighting the Jewish presence on the island since ancient times. Fast forward to now, while remnants of the Jewish past remain, and a few Jewish families live on the island, hundreds of visitors and descendants from around the world travel each year to appreciate its Jewish heritage. Moving on to growth and influence. The photo you see here is Via Mercato Vecchio, now called Socrates Street, showing the shopkeepers and the merchants. The Jews of Rhodes referred to the street as Arriva del Kadir. Next is the economic contributions. The Rhodian Jews played a key role in commerce and trade, including the importation and exportation of goods such as wine, olive oil, textiles, and spices. Here's an image of the ships at the harbor of Rhodes in 1862, taken by Francis Bedford. The following slide features the 1884 photographs by Felix von Luschan of Avraham Kodron, a Jewish merchant from Rhodes, and his wife, Sultana Benatar. Their regular journeys between Rhodes and Makri, present-day Fitier, show the mobility of Rhodes' Jewish merchants who traveled to nearby ports to conduct trade and obtain goods. The next images were from the 1930s of the market square, known as Piazza del Fuoco or Charchi Camado, where most Jewish businesses were located. It is now called Hippocrates Square. Trade and occupations. The Rhodian Jews were involved in textiles and the manufacture of clothes, tailoring, shoemaking, metalsmithing, money changing, butcheries, selling produce, trinkets, household supplies, and others. Wealthy Jewish families, such as the Al-Khadefs and the Notrikas, were involved in commercial and banking businesses. The photo on the left shows Sami Notrika and Moshe Habib in their import-export office. On the right is the shoe shop owned by Moshe Hasson with Rebecca Amato and apprentice Salvatore Galanti. Next are some of the Jewish business envelopes where you can see the family names. The following are some Jewish business letterheads. We now go to Spaniol, the spoken language, and Soletreo, the handwritten form. Spaniol, also called Judeo-Spanish, Judesmo, or Ladino, is an ancient form of Castilian Spanish mixed with elements of Hebrew, Turkish, Greek, and other Romance languages. It was brought by the Sephardic Jews from the Iberian Peninsula who settled within the Ottoman Empire. Here is an example of a 1937 postcard from Rhodes to Los Angeles by Leon Levy to his brother Bahor, written in Solotreo. The translations were included for reference. Next is an old postcard from 1912.
Excuse me, just one quick question about the last slide. If you can go back. The address at
Yes.
it's Bab Samech Ayin. Would that be USA?
Yeah, that's correct. It's quite unique. They would mix all the languages.
Did you ever get the post?
Oh yeah, yes, it did. But actually, they were hand carried, actually, and
Oh, he gave it to somebody.
yeah, to
Okay,
come across. And the next picture in 1912, there's another postcard. It went from Rhodes. I'll continue. Yeah, good. This is the 1912 postcard. Again, there's no stamps on it like we do nowadays. It was hand carried. This was during the Italian occupation of Rhodes, sent by Aron Hasson to her brother Avram. It was sent from Rhodes to Vancouver, Canada, as it says Vancouver, Canada on the address, but not with stamps. Good question, though. And we are going to have questions at the end, so don't worry. You're welcome to ask. Another unique document is a promissory note. At that time, the men of the household were the providers, business owners, shopkeepers, and were involved in lending and exchanging money. This 1926 document shows that while women were homemakers, a few of them would also loan money and conduct transactions. This is between an agreement between Mazel Tov Hasson and Rachel Benoon. Now let's look at religious practices. What you see here is the 1930 image of the Kahal Shalom synagogue, believed to have been built in 1577 based on the Hebrew inscription at its fountain. Another 1930 image of the Kahal Shalom is with Hazan Yudah Levi at the Teva, which is the prayer reading table, with congregants in the background. In ancient times, the Jews of Rhodes were Romaniok and spoke Greek. As the Sephardic population increased, they prevailed in all aspects of Jewish law and custom, and even the native Jews adopted the Spanish language. Next are three images of the oldest synagogue in Rhodes, the Kahal Grande, taken during the 1930s before its destruction during World War II. It is believed to have been rebuilt after the Ottoman siege in 1480. Today, only parts of the walls and floor remain. Now let's look at some old documents. First, on the left is the 1912 letter from Rabbi Nissim Danon to the Italian general Amiglio, asking for the release of Bahor Hanan, who served in the Turkish army and was taken prisoner. Second, on the right, is the 1919 donation receipt of 5 francs from Bahor Musafir at the Kahal Midrash Kamondo synagogue, which was a small synagogue located at Calle de Talmud Torah. This kind gesture shows support for charitable organizations like the Kupat Hoser Dalim in Rhodes that was used to help those in need. The following images are about the Rabbinical College of Rhodes. The school was established in 1928 and attracted notable professors and outstanding Jewish students from Izmir, Istanbul, and other nearby regions. On the left, taken in 1937, shows the young rabbinical students with a minimum age acceptance at 13 years old. On the right is the diploma of Rabbi Michel Al-Bagli, who was among the first students to graduate from there. Rabbi al-Bagli immigrated to the United States in 1939 and served the Rhodes communities in Montgomery, Los Angeles, and Portland, Oregon. He was my rabbi for my bar mitzvah and taught me how to use the tefillin. Moving on to La Juderia, Life and Traditions. This is a 1931 photo taken by Albert Gabriel of La Calle Ancha, meaning the wide street, with its old fountain on the left. La Calle Ancha is affectionately known as the heart of La Juderia. Next are two images of La Calle Ancha, one from the early 1900s and the other from the early 1930s. The following are images of La Calle Ancha with the seahorse fountain, which still exists today. Now, here's an old 1929 map of Rhodes showing the Jewish quarter in the southeast location of the map. As you can see, the Italians use synagogues, mosques, and other important places as landmarks for the map. According to historian Avraham Galanti, the Jewish population of Rhodes was about 4,000 at the beginning of the 20th century, and about 5,000 in 1935. Moving on, we'll have a look at some old street photos of La Juderia. Here are two images of Calle Kihila Shalom in the 1930s. It is now called Simiyu Street. Next is the street called El Datalar, meaning date tree. The couple here were my great-grandparents, Israel Hasson and Rachel Levi, in the backyard of their home on El Datalar. It is now called Pericleos Street. And in the left photo is a picture of Pericleos, or El Datalar, and with my family's home in the center with the window showing. Another two images. On the left is El Espejo, meaning mirror, because it looks like a mirror. These arches are still in existence today. On the right was a Benvenisti home next to the Hospice of St. Catherine. Now let's go to the Jewish names in Rhodes and the 1920 census. This image here shows the community elders with their traditional garments, the men wearing fezzes and long coats, the women with their headgear known as tocados, with a pinned ornament called a rosetta. They used yasmak, or scarves, as head coverings and wore robes and dark coats lined with fur. Next is an image of the 1920 census for a Galanti family, listing the household members. And according to the census of 1920, the 10 most common family names were Hasson, Israel, Al-Hadef, Menashe, Capeluto, Franco, Levi, Cohen, Hanan, and Amato. Now we have next three samples of identifications. On the left is a 1905 Ottoman ID issued to Rachel Benoun, married to Moshe Franco. On the top right is the 1924 passport, Italian passport of Giuseppe Capeluto, and below is the 1929 Italian passport of Matilda Israel. Moving on to daily life and traditions. This beautiful image of Nassim, Rachel Hasson smiling with their children at their home on El Datalar. Unfortunately, the family members who remained in Rhodes were deported and killed in Auschwitz, and only the girl sitting on the ground survived. Her name was Belina Hasson Segura. Next, we'll see an image of a traditional Brit Milah circumcision procession to the Kahal Shalom in 1931. The baby, Victor Soriano, is being carried by his Ketala, which is godmother. The following image is a beautiful wedding photo of Edouard Menashe and Renee Sermani at the Kahal Shalom in 1937. Another photo is the wedding procession of Daniel, Israel, and Julia Hasson along Lakai Ancha in 1935. Notice the community members sharing in the celebration of this occasion. The next image is a group of young women in costumes for the Jewish holiday of Purim in the 1920s. Next, we can see a gathering of Musani Habib and the Leah al-Hadef families. As noted earlier, the Jews of Rhodes formed a close-knit community in which familial connections could often be traced across households, as some homes were multi-generational. The father typically served as the head of the household and main provider. If he passed away, the eldest male, known as the Bahor, assumed responsibility as the head of the family and supported its members. The women played a central role in sustaining family life by nurturing family, the children, managing the household, and passing down traditions. Their contributions also extended beyond the home, as charitable organizations such as Ladies' Society and the Refectory demonstrate women's active involvement in caring for the poor and the sick of the community. Moving on to education. This is a 1934 photo of the students and their teachers at the Jewish school. Children were taught secular and religious subjects at the Alliance School, located at Calle de la Escola. Let's look at some school images. The first photo in the top left shows the school's entrance with the dedication plaque and fountain. Today, only the memorial plaque still stands. The other three images show activities such as calisthenics, arts, and music classes, and other images of students at their desks and a group gathering in the yard. Now on the right, we're seeing school diplomas from the 1930s under the Italian occupation. And on the left is a 1910 report card for Rebecca Menashe Musafir when the Alliance School was still under the French curriculum before the Italian occupation. The next slide is of leisure activities. Here's a 1931 photo of a group swimming near La Puerta de la Mar, meaning door to the sea. The community enjoyed the outdoors with easy access to beaches, parks, hiking grounds, and recreational spaces. The following slide shows sports and leisure activities. Players of a football team, young men with bikes and tennis rackets, a group at Mount Smith, and a group of young women at the Mondraki Harbor. Moving on to photographs and artifacts, our window into the past. This small chest with a Star of David was one of the artifacts recovered from the Alliance School after its destruction. The next slide shows images of individual and family portraits, some in traditional clothing, and over time modern attire becomes dominant. Another group of photos that show daily life: praying, preparing meals, taking care of a newborn, hanging out with family and friends. And finally, a slide of social events and group gatherings. Now we're going to move on to Rhodes Jewish artifacts. This is a cucharera from Rhodes, a silverware holder of spoons and forks that served dulces or sweets. The next slide is the 800-year-old Torah, I included it because it is an important topic that will be presented later and is considered one of the oldest artifacts brought by the Sephardic Jews from the Iberian Peninsula to Rhodes. Also, I wish to extend my appreciation for Marcelo Benvenisti and the Shalom Temple of Buenos Aires for allowing me to exhibit the 800-year-old Torah to the Rhodes League communities in the United States from 2003 and 2004. Thank you very much, Marcelo. Now we have the 1363 tombstone of Haïm Provincial. This is one of the few tombstones we discovered in July of 2023 with the help of archaeologist Nikolaos Mastrochristos. This tombstone is the oldest Hebrew artifact present in Rhodes. The translation says, Tombstone of the young man Haïm Provincial, the son of Shlomo, who died in the month of Tammuz, 5123, equivalent to the Gregorian calendar, of June 1363. Another ancient artifact is the 1426 Siddur written by Moshe Gracian. As shown in its inscription, quote, with the help of God, here in the city of Rhodes, written by my hand, a worm and not a man, Moshe, son of the honored Rabbi Yitzhak Gracian, Tuesday the 24th of Tevet, 5186, which is 1426. The Gracian family later played a key role in restoring the Kahal Grande after the Ottoman siege in 1480. In 1929, the historian Isaiah Sohn found a plaque stating, quote, Sarah, widow of Rabbi Yitzhak Gracian, made this donation as redemption of their souls, unquote. The plaque no longer exists since the Kahal Grande was destroyed during World War II. Next is the 1448 will of Ezekiel Maristiri, which was written in Latin. He asked to be buried with his parents at the Hill of the Jews. On the right are two images showing the Gate of St. John and its walkway, which is the main entrance to the old Jewish cemetery, which is referred to. Now let's look at religious books. These three books were acquired by the Rhodes Foundation and are part of the book series of the Jewish Life in Rhodes traveling exhibit. First on the left is the 1749 book, Malki Ba Kodesh, by Grand Rabbi Ezra Malki, containing commentaries and novellae. Second is the 1815 book, Moshe Yedaber, by Rabbi Moshe Yudah Israel, a collection of responses later published by his son, Haïm Israel. The third on the right is the 1896 book, Ben Yamin, by Grand Rabbi Rahamim Haïm Yudah Israel, on novellae and legal responses. All three Grand Rabbis are buried in the Jewish cemetery of Rhodes. Here, next we have the Megillot. Both were from Yitzhak Hasson and were brought by Jamila Hasson and children when they emigrated to the United States. Next are two beautiful ketubot, marriage contracts. On the left is the 1852 ketubah of Yedidia Yosef Israel and his wife Reyna. On the right is the 1872 ketubah of Azariah Notrika and his wife Rahel Leah Tarika. Both feature passages from Tehillim, Psalm 128, written in Hebrew along the border, forming a symbolic and protective frame of divine blessings over the marriages. Moving on, we have the 1881 yad or Torah pointer, a gift honoring Esther Haim Notreka. Below is the shofar made from a ram's horn, belonging to Haim Franco, who was born in Rhodes and brought the shofar to the United States and served as a tokeya, a shofar blower, in New York City. Now let's look at the 3 silver Torah crowns from Rhodes. On the top left is the Soriano Torah crown, which is part of the Jewish Museum of New York collection. The one below it was commissioned by Yosef Eliyahu Piha for the Rhodes community of Los Angeles in 1918, and it belongs to a private collector. On the right is the Torah crown of the Ben-Nun family, which was commissioned by my great-grandmother, Perla Menashe Ben-Nun, in memory of her son, Rahamim Ben-Nun, who died in Los Angeles in 1913. The Torah crowns were made by the Greek silversmith Demetrio Kromida. The following slide shows 3 artifacts. First is the 1906 Hanukkah made of tin. The small 8 containers with scalloped edges held olive oil and pine needle wicks. One of the tinsmiths in Rhodes was Nassim Ben Benisti, who made the Hanukkahs for the Jewish community together with his employee, Yitzhak Amato. Second is the silver cucharera belonging to my grandparents, Joseph and Victoria Hasson, who shared with me their memories of Rhodes. This cucharera formed part of my grandmother's trousseau, a gift from her mother, Rochelle Tarika. In many Rhodesley homes, such pieces were brought out for festive occasions and later passed down from one generation to the next. And the third artifact is the rosewater sprinkler. It's used to dispense agua de flor throughout the home and after the Turkish bath, also to refresh congregants after a long day of prayer services. Moving on to preservation efforts. This photo was taken in 2008 at the Kahal Shalom with the former residents and survivors of the Holocaust. Sammy Modiano, David Galanti, Stella Levy, with Rebecca Habib Levy, telling their perspectives to the Rhodesley descendants as their audience. Now this brings me to the end of my presentation, and there's a Ladino proverb that I treasure. Una rosa no hace una corona. One rose does not make a crown. It reminds us that meaningful achievements come from collective efforts. Preserving the Jewish history of Rhodes through gathering of photographs and artifacts, restoring what remains, teaching its history, and renewing its culture has been possible only because many hands and hearts have worked together. That shared dedication ensures the legacy of the Jews of Rhodes endures and continues to enrich the island's cultural and historical life. We are deeply grateful to all those who have supported this work. Thank you all.
Next.
If there's somebody who has some questions, maybe you have some time.
Yeah, I do. Yes. Any questions on any of the slides you saw or the topics that you...
That's so interesting.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yes.
Thank you so much for this presentation. It's so fascinating to see all these pictures and these stories coming together. And I was particularly interested in the photos and scans of the passports that you showed us and the school reports. And there, you see so much change in what political authority was actually in charge of Rhodes. And I was wondering, could you tell us more about the impact of these political changes on the linguistic landscape of the Jews in Rhodes. So, aside from Espanol, what languages did they speak? What languages did they use to interact with? Because I could think of like at least 5 or 6 languages that they'd be interacting with in that area. So I was wondering if you.
A great question, asking about the languages that were involved in all those hundreds of years. With the Jews, we know that it was the Romaniot Jews that lived on the island, which was a Greek-speaking community. And then as the years went by, when more Sephardic Jews were immigrating to the island, there was Espanol or Ladino or Judeo-Spanish, whatever you want to call it or label it. And that's what was used eventually by all the Jews of Rhodes, even those that were Romaniot Greek speakers. They acquired the Spanish language in all the homes eventually, and the businesses, and in the religious services. There would be more Ladino and less Greek, and eventually it was all just Hebrew and Ladino or Judeo-Spanish. And it's unusual when I'm here in Rhodes on many of my trips. I ask this kind of a quiz that I have whenever I'm with taxi drivers, and I say, "Do you know what languages the Jews of Rhodes spoke here in Rhodes, in the Old Town?" Yeah, they say, yeah, they were in the Old Town. And I say, "Do you know what languages they spoke?" And they say, "Well, probably Hebrew." And I say, "No, guess again." And then they would say Greek. And I say, "No, they didn't speak Greek or Hebrew in their homes or on the street." And then they would say Turkish. And I said, "No, they spoke Spanish." And they would always, no one has got that right yet. So Ladino was the language over the last several hundred years, since the Spanish Inquisitions, which lasted 100 years in itself.
Let me say, Aaron, in our Barbara Center, we teach them.
Yeah, very special. Yeah, it's very special that they're making this extra effort to bring this ancient language back, which is tremendous. Very special. Yes, Assaf.
I'm totally impressed with your presentation, and I think in 20 minutes you probably showed us things that have been collected throughout decades. My question is, how do you get all this material? I guess some of it is really family heritage, but then this was just the beginning, I guess.
Yeah, it's been a lifelong project, I guess, of mine, you call it. When I was in college, like it was earlier said, that's when I took a class, and I wrote an article. It was published, and I was interviewing my grandparents. And for the article that I wrote during college, I needed photographs. So I asked my grandparents for the photos initially. But then I would interview aunts and uncles for the history part that I was learning. And so I would get photos from them. And that was in 1972. So from during the 1970s and 1980s, I still kept my interest in writing about the Sephardic Jews from Rhodes. And so during the 80s, that happened. In the 1990s was when I came back to Rhodes, because my first trip was 1975. In 1995, I came with my family, and that's when I realized that there was the synagogue in Rhodes, but no information that the tourists were going into the synagogue and not knowing the history. So I asked the authorities here at the board of directors if I could use the rooms that were empty next to the synagogue, if I could use those to display photos for a museum, and they said yes. And so the door opened up, and I kept acquiring artifacts and photographs through the 1990s and then even to today. And my most recent acquisition was just a few months ago, is when I acquired the Torah crown from the Kahal Grande, or Kahal Gadol. I just acquired it a few months ago. And it turned out, not only is it special for the history of the Jews of Rhodes, but it was commissioned by my great-grandmother, which was a total surprise to me and my family. He says, what? They commissioned this, and it went to the Kahal Gadol, and then I acquired it just recently in Israel. So the project of collecting photos and artifacts has been I've been doing this for decades.
I'm just curious because I think, like you're telling about this, it's kind of a whole hunting story where, and now you have the trophy. I'm interested in the hunting. How did you come across this? What did it take to achieve that, other than money, of course?
Yeah. My wife says I knock on a lot of doors. And I say, well, and I do. I ask a lot of relatives and people that know my family or they know me, and I say, can I have that photograph, or do you have any photos or artifacts that you're not interested in? And a lot of times the family say, you know what, Aaron, I have all this stuff and I have that. My kids, they don't even care. And this looks like what you're interested in, so have this. And so there were a lot of gracious supporting families for my project. And because I wanted to make sure that the history of our ancestors from Rhodes is not forgotten. So that motivation gave me the opportunity to go from family to family to family to collect these special items, and they were very helpful to share. Yeah, so thank you. Yeah. Yeah.
I just wanted to make a comment regarding the previous question about what language the people from Rhodes were speaking.
Mm-hmm.
It was not only Ladino.
Mm-hmm.
It was, of course, also French, because of the Alliance Israeli-Française, Italian, living with Italians, Greek, and some Turkish, because I have seen people from Rhodes speaking from one language to another easily.
Yeah. Carmen is totally on point, because when I talk to different family members, they brag, oh, I knew 5 languages. They all knew like 5 languages.
That's what's true.
And it was true to an extent. Some used it in business, some used it.
Yes, depends on the environment. They were speaking the language according to the environment. Greeks when they were Greeks, Turkish, Italian, because French, because they studied the Alliance Israeli.
Yes.
Which became Italian, Scuola Italian after that, so they had to learn Italian.
Yes.
So all the Jews knew 4 or 5
there were a lot of them were, not everyone, but
not everyone,
many.
Most of them.
Yeah, they all had different languages that they spoke. Yeah. And the commercial center, the Socrates Square now, during the 1930s and earlier, the main language that the Greeks or Turks or whoever was purchasing anything in the market square, that was all in Ladino, the businesses. So a lot of the other people in the neighborhoods, they would use Ladino or Judeo-Spanish for business transactions. Yes.
I have such a very small question.
Sure.
Maybe I didn't get it, but is it possible to see all this material like online?
Yeah, there is a website that I made in the same year that I established the museum in 1997. I set up an internet website when internet was at its infancy, and so I put the many photos and the things that I talked about, several of these photos are also on the website. This rhodesjewishmuseum.org. Oh, it's on the pamphlet that everybody received.
Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. And let's see, to that, and also one of the unusual things that I added to the, or that I initiated to remind people of their genealogical ancestry, I have one section on the tombstones in the Jewish cemetery of Rhodes, which has over 1,000 Jewish tombstones. So you can click on the alphabet of the last name you're looking for. Turkia, you click on T, and then you have an alphabetical listing. And now I've added the tombstones of the Jews that lived in Rhodes, that made their own diaspora to Los Angeles or New York, Atlanta, Seattle. In Buenos Aires, I have now a page on the Buenos Aires Rhodesleys that moved there, as well as those that moved to other cities. Yes, you're welcome. Thank you. Any other questions for right now?
Maybe for the coffee break.
Yeah, okay, sounds good. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Okay, our next speaker is Assaf Levitin, who is Chazan, or cantor, at the Reformed Synagogue of Hamburg. He's originally from Israel, but his musical journey started with playing the drums, the saxophone, and the clarinet, and his singing career started with the Reyno National Choir in Israel. He has been a concert and opera singer. He's a composer, a director of a choir, and a teacher. And he had his training at the Abraham Geiger College in Potsdam, and he also studied at the Music Academy of Saarland. He has done some research on Alberto Hemsi, which is what we're going to hear about now. And one of his main research interests is bringing to life the Jewish liturgical music that has been quiet since the Holocaust. So he made a number of recordings of old Jewish liturgical songs from Germany as well as other countries, and he has been singing those not only in Germany but also France and Poland and in Switzerland as well. And yeah, we're now delighted to welcome you here and hear something about the musical history. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me? This mic is... I think it's really a mic for singing. Yeah. Only that it's being recorded and broadcast. Then I don't need the mic. And I'll just take it away. So, good morning. Thank you. I'm really delighted to be here. And when Annette asked me to, well, she didn't ask me. I asked her to join to join this conference. Our first time we met, I spoke in a seminary at the FU about Alberto Hemsi and his Copla Sephardis. Alberto Hemsi has become a very important person in my professional life. Not only per se, but as a part of the history, is a very, unfortunately, very unusual, but very beautiful thing to say. This is part of our history as Egyptians, and we are committed to keep it intact. So this is this beautiful Eliyahu Nabi synagogue. There, I think you can probably go to the next slide. Yeah, this is his choir there. Hemsi is here, I think. That's his choir. He also had an orchestra, and there was a small harmonium up there where the choir stand, which is, by the way, a bit funny because I asked the Sephardic Chazan who was actually singing in this choir. I asked him, did he play the harmonium on Shabbat? And Sephardic are much milder in their interpretation of halakha than Ashkenazi are. So he said he played it very soft. So if you play it softly, it's okay. Anyway, almost 30 years, 27 years. Hemsi lived and prospered at the Eliyahu Hanabi synagogue, and he started also there. He founded a music edition called. Can you go on, please? Oh well, this is. I think these are Hemsi's parents, probably at the same time when they took the picture of the happy couple. Go on, please. And this is these are the three ladies. I think some of you may know them: Allegra, Juliette, and Kitty. Hemsi, the three daughters of Miriam and Alberto. Now, 1932, Alberto Hemsi founds the Édition Orientale de Musique, which is the first music edition in Egypt at all, not just for Jewish music. The first printing house for music. Of course, he printed it in Italy, but still proudly says this is in Alexandria. And this music edition was printing just one composer. It was just for him. But all his catalog is in his in this Édition Orientale. Here we see Danseuse Saïdienne. This is instrumental, but the main work that he did, please go on. Okay, we'll go on with his life. 1941 to 1945, because Alexandria was occupied by the Nazis, he fled with his family to Cairo and had a terrible time there, both not being able to practice his job at the synagogue, losing his father, his sick father, and his brother who got killed at the war, and started developing health issues of his own. He was there diagnosed with diabetes. 1945, he returned to Alexandria, and then, please go on. You know who this is? Exactly, Gamal Abdel Nasser, who was the Egyptian president, and he started a very, very harsh persecution of any foreign citizens. We remember Hemsi was Italian, and they were not welcome. In 1957, he took his wife and his daughters and everything he could take with him, which did not include his grand piano, and fled to Paris. Next, please. And shortly after he arrived, he managed to get jobs in as musical director of two synagogues. One of them is the Don Isaac Abarbanel, and the other one, please, is the Brit Shalom. in Paris, he was also teaching Chazanut, Sephardic Chazanut, in a rabbinical institute. Go on, please. 1971, this is Leon Cohen. Leon Cohen is, I think, Kitty's husband. His second daughter's husband was also a student of Alberto Hemsi. We see again, he couldn't teach music without getting married somehow. So Leon Cohen recorded Alberto Hemsi's Kabbalat Shabbat, which appeared both as an LP and a music notebook. Next. His final volume of the Kopla Sephardit, he started the Kopla Sephardit, I'm sorry, I didn't talk about the Kopla Sephardit yet. In the Édition Orientale de Musique, he started with the collection of the Ladino songs that he collected in many places, with Zampieri's instruction of finding the right harmonic language for it. So he started it 2 years after arriving in Alexandria, and kept doing it also after moving to Paris, because his idea was to have 10 volumes altogether, each one containing 6 songs. That makes 60 songs altogether, and he kept doing it until 1973, the very last one, with the introduction, My Last Words. And about 2 years later, he died of lung cancer in Paris. Let's continue. So these are the Kopla Sephardis from 1932, 2 volumes, Opus 7 and Opus 8, which I have here in the original version. You might want to take a look. I found it in Paris, in the Institut Européen de Musique, which his late wife, shortly before she died, she gave everything that remained. She gave it to the Institute, manuscripts, and rest and unsold music, which is mint, just laid in a cupboard, and nobody cared for it. So I got this hunter's look. This, you know exactly what I'm talking about. May I have it? I'll pay whatever it costs. So I got out of there with a bunch of music, all original volumes, even the ones I had in photocopies I bought, because there's nothing like holding it in your hands. The interesting thing that you might see in the booklets that I passed around is, first of all, that you can see on the front page, it says Rodi. These are songs from Rhodes. The first 12 songs are, according to Alberto Hemsi's own testimony, have been collected in Rhodes. And you can also see in these booklets his love for detail. You can see he put a very nice picture of taken from Rhodes. And also, he used, he was very specific about which variation of text he was using. Some words are very specific. I don't have it right now, but you can see on the, maybe I can, just for a second. Thank you. When he takes, just a small example, you have all the texts, all the lyrics at the front, and then, como la rosa en la huerta, G-U with umlaut, huerta, and then there's a small, and downstairs he writes huerta with H. Or the next one, Hazina, Hazine, Hazina, sorry.
and then as a commentary, enferma, right? So this is like very specific Ladino for Rhodes, it's not like Hoch Ladino, stage Ladino, because if you speak Ladino in Turkey or in Bulgaria or somewhere in the middle in Rhodes, you have specific words. One more, avenir is porvenir. Yesterday, by the way, when you were singing this beautiful Quien Supiense, you said cinco libros de la Torah, and he has cinco libros de la ley. So there are some, which is the same. It's just another way of saying the same thing. So it was very important for Alberto Hemsi to have like the Rhodes songbook in Rhodes Ladino. Sorry, in Rhodes Ladino. Let's hear. I don't think we have the stereo capacity, and
It's maybe difficult. Maybe you can...
I'll just try to play it from here. Two songs from the. כן. איך מחברים, איך קוראים לזה? 16 משהו?
כן.
כן. כן, אני פשוט לא יודע איך קוראים לו. Just a second. I think it's worthwhile to wait a second. So you might know the text, Durme, hermosa donzella, but not necessarily this very. This is JBL. What is it? Select for. Oh, now I see. Select for go. We can try. You know what? I think this probably might also work like this. Yeah. I'll try my best here. So this is a recording from the first CD of the Copla Sephardis, which I recorded with the pianist Naaman Wagner at 2018, and this is the Durme by Alberto Hemsi.
So I want to point out a few things. I think I might have a solution for the speaker. I want to point out a few things. First of all, only the first volume is a volume where Hemsi just wrote one. He actually just arranged one verse and wrote repetition markings, so the pianist plays exactly the same thing and only the text changes later on, and then you can principally you can also sing all 7 verses because it's just doing it again and again. As soon as he started with the second volume on, he chose not to do it, but to arrange 2 or 3 verses through, and then make like a more artistic work out of it, with the compromise of leaving text out. But because his love for detail was so evident, he didn't want to leave it out altogether, so it's still in the booklets to read. He did put all the music in the booklets so that you don't miss anything. And also in the booklets, he writes very, very thorough articles explaining what he meant to do. And just preparing for this, as I told you, Rhodes was not too much in my scope of research, but I want to read for you from the introduction to the first volume, translated this morning with the way people translate today. But he says this: one island in the heart of the Aegean Sea, renowned for many centuries, offers, from a folkloristic point of view, a unique illustration of the dissemination of these traditions, the celebrated island of Rhodes, whose name has been associated with one of the 7 wonders of the world, I guess the Colossus, right? And which is also renowned in folklore thanks to the work of Alberto. Oh, I'm sorry, it's not him writing, it's Jose Subira, a music scientist. Yeah. Thanks to the work of Alberto Hemsi, whose activity as a disseminator has been extensive and whose actual contribution is in no way inferior to its promise. In Rhodes, 3 communities coexist, each with its own religious practices, artistic manifestations, and distinctive musical expression: Orthodox Greeks, Muslim Turks, and Jews. From a musical perspective, it may be said that on more than one occasion, the remote ancestors of these communities reached the Christian West earlier than others, leaving behind elements of their music. Much of this music, particularly with regard to Andalusian folklore, was later carried away after the expulsion of the Jews by the Catholic monarchs as a musical treasure that was largely lost in Spain but preserved with great care within the Sephardic community. This beautiful literary and musical treasure, in the form of songs and romances, was extremely popular on the Iberian Peninsula in the time of Juan del Encina, as it may still be today, despite the disorienting influence of contemporary exotic dances
the Muñeira in Galicia, the Zortzico in the Basque country, and so on. So anyway, this preservation of the language, some of the music, maybe even with Spanish/Christian sources in the music itself, was preserved in the small and somewhat isolated places like the Isle of Rhodes, and the endeavor to preserve them was a significant thing in Alberto Hemsi's life. Maybe we can move to the next. This is basically a children's song. We were talking about it yesterday. It's about the fly eating the mulberry, and then the spider eating the fly, and then the mouse eating and so on, which is very similar in structure to a famous Jewish song, Chad Gadya, exactly. And there is actually also a Chad Gadya by Alberto Hemsi, Un Cabretico, but unfortunately, it was not written in Rhodes, so I'm not going to present it today. But I want to maybe probably finish by presenting you the and I hope maybe now it will work. I wrote down. Go back once, because this is the very last verse. It actually kind of oh no! It just goes on. The wasp eating the fly, and so it gets longer and longer. I can give the whole story of the piano. In the spider. Wait the wasp, wait the fly, wait the tree. Just like how they do. The mouse moves. Take the spider, take the wasp, take the fly, take the tree.
suspect very much, if one of you has the booklet now, you can see that probably it goes on. One thing in the parallel, the liturgical parallel of Echad Mi Yodea, it goes up and up and up and up, and finishes with God killing Malach HaMavet. God slaughters the angel of death, and that's the end of the story. Like, there's nothing higher than God. This is actually the morale of the story. It's a funny. I must say, when I told my children first the Chad Gadya, both of them were just. It's so fascinating, but there's a morale also about it that it doesn't go all the way up, like the turtles holding the earth don't go all the way down. There is some point where it ends, and this is God. I'm trying to think if I left anything behind. I think this was my part of like the inspiration that Alberto Hemsi got from the Jewish life and the Jewish tradition, the Ladino tradition in Rhodes. And it's very nice, although he only spent a few years as a young man right after finishing his studies in Rhodes, this place had affected his biography tremendously. First of all, by finding the love of his life, the charming young Miriam Capeluto, and building a life with her and 3 daughters, and also starting his artistic endeavor, which remained throughout his career, financing all out of his own pockets, doing many other excursions like this to collect even more material. He has also a very thick book of his studies, just the music notation and the text variations, over 300 texts, I think. But these few years in Rhodes were very, very influential, and the first 2 volumes of his gigantic work were actually inspired by this beautiful island. Thank you. If you have any questions or remarks, as far as I'm concerned, you're very welcome to ask. Yes.
Thank you for your paper. It was fascinating to learn about Hemsi and his life. I have 2 questions.
Yes.
The Institute in Paris more or less has whatever remains from his family.
Yes. Of his artistic work, of course.
For the museum, I've been trying to buy on the second-hand market these books, and I haven't found anything.
How much do you want? No.
I don't want to haggle, but will they be willing to donate?
I would be very happy to connect you to Hervé Roten, who's running the institute.
Sure.
I'm not aware, maybe some of you in this room know, if any of the daughters is still alive. I spoke to Allegra in 2018 when the CD was out. Okay. I think, she sounded very old back then and a little bit confused. But maybe you can reach out to them. As far as I know, maybe Hervé Roten still has a few of the originals which are not for sale, but are for very special purposes, like showing them in the right places. I would definitely I would help you, and I will if my word will help. I'll help you very. I'll be happy to. I'd be delighted.
And 2 more questions.
Yes.
Is your MA thesis? It's obviously on Hemsi. In which language is it? Is it available?
In English.
At German University, was it?
Yes, in Potsdam. But I wrote it in English because there are so few people in the world that are interested in that, and they don't necessarily speak German.
All right.
Not all of them.
And one third question: Did he have any contact with Avram Galante, the famous historian who wrote on the Jews of Turkey?
Not
Because
that I
they're kind of contemporaries.
right. I'm not aware of that. One more thing. So I don't know.
All right.
I really don't know. One interesting thing, I was talking about it yesterday, I think, with you, Alberto, is that musically speaking, you know, the Ladino folk song is not diatonic music. It's more, it has some similarity with makam, which means you have like 3/4 of a tone, not just like, you cannot really play it on a piano, because piano has half semitones all the way up and all the way down. Pouring it into modern instrumentalization with the piano was a very conscious decision of Alberto Hemsi to moderate the melodies a bit. Basically, he said if it's like if it's a fourth tone which you don't have in the piano, he would round it up. If the melody goes up, he would round it down if the melody goes down. And I don't know about his music theory about it is very thoroughly discussed when he was in Egypt. There was back then there was a huge quarrel in the Egyptian music world about a term called the tajdid. Tajdid in Arabic is renewal, and to put it very, very to simplify it a lot is, can an Egyptian Arab orchestra accommodate a piano? Because of this semi microtonal thing, and Hemsi was an ardent supporter of modernity. That would mean killing the makam, killing the. But he thought it was killing it in order to have it reborn in a world that's not going to appreciate it. So let's try and pour it into some kind of a more modern, up-to-date form to keep it alive altogether, because otherwise it would be totally forgotten. Today, I don't think this is the trend. We tend to perform Ladino or Arabic music only with original instruments, unless it's a very declared East meet West kind of project. Yes.
I have a question, or I had a question before.
Yeah.
Actually, related what you were just saying when you spoke about Sampieri's reaction in Milano.
Yes.
When he first heard the first version of Hemsi's presentation of the coplas to him, was it the reaction and the suggestion to adapt it, to rearrange it, was it a result of exactly this clash of musical traditions and different musical systems of like in the Asian, let's say, Oriental world, and different musical styles, and the Italy? I mean, let's say.
Zampieri, we owe a lot to Zampieri because he was not happy with Hemsi simplifying it to really to 3 chords, which you could do, basically, but he said this is modal music, it's not tonal music like we know it, it's not, like I said, major, minor, dur, moll, but it's a different thing, and you have to find different rules, musical rules of harmonizing. I can talk about that for hours, but I'd rather not. How to make a harmonic world to fit in, to not mislead your ears into major or minor. The way he did it was either bitonal or empty chords, which don't have you just leave the third, which is either minor or major, you just leave it out. And so, up to you to decide if you hear it like major or minor or a third thing, which was actually what he intended.
But with his grandma or his
they have recognized the songs?
They would have recognized. He didn't touch the melody other than rounding up and down. But I'm not sure they would have liked it, to be completely honest, because the thing he did was in the trend of his time, more or less, Ravel, De Falla, maybe Bartok, maybe Dvořák, who took folk melodies. You know, Bartok, we know, Bartok and Kodai, they took the very first tape recorders and went to the mountains and to villages to record this. Hemsi had a pencil and notes paper, and he wrote it down, which was reported to have been very funny for the people who sang, and he wrote it down. I said, how do you write down music? That's why I can. So they tried to keep, to get like the folk song as an inspiration to very prolific and embellished kind of composing, and it would have been a right question to ask: was he actually a composer or an arranger? But you know, we do think of Dvořák or Kodai, Bartok as composers, even though a lot of the music is actually like arrangement. But if you just take one thing and you build a whole world around it, then you compose. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Pleasure.
We now have a half an hour coffee break, and then start with Dagmara.
הקול שלו, אני לא שומע, אולי שזה לעשות. היו כמה תוכניות שהוא עשה, אם נגיד לעשות את זה לרדיו,
from one island to another island. And am I too... Okay, let's try. It was like a difficult task to get this mic to the position. Okay, it's working. So our next speaker will be Dagmara Budchioch. Okay, well pronounced. Okay, so and I'm personally happy to finally meet you in person, because we got already connected a few years ago in connection with our two-road project, when you also gave a lecture at another conference workshop. So it's good to meet in person. And just a few personal words, I just said it in the break. For me now, after walking 2 days across the streets of the old city, it makes a huge difference to see all those photographs that you showed, Aron, and to hear about Hemsi, and everything now connects together physically and mentally in my sometimes a little bit confused head. So it's such a good thing to be together here, and to see, like to feel the history, and to touch it and to smell it, and also with the cats in the photograph. And at the same time, another cat was just passing by, saying hi to an ancestor cat. So, okay, Khalas. Let's go on. So, Dagmara, she's a proven expert on decorated Esther scrolls, and I know that she also wrote her dissertation about it, which then turned into a monograph about decorated, illuminated Esther scrolls. Thereby focusing on a mass production in northern Apennine Island, like Italy. So this was her main concern, starting her research that culminated in this dissertation. And since then, she offered and contributed her expertise on book culture, materiality, and book art mainly in two various research projects across Europe and also in Israel. And she published also several articles on that subject or related subject on materiality. And the latest article, and then the circle closes again, just appeared in a volume that was published by Annette in connection with an exhibition at the State Library in Berlin about Hebrew manuscripts that are from the treasure trove of the State Library, like medieval Hebrew manuscript showing book art and manuscript like culture and materiality. So her latest article can also be kids in German, but it's good to have you here in so many different forms. And currently you're located at Paris at the École Pratique des Hautes Études. So my French is even worse Spanish is worse, but and I think it's a big pile project, like on those manuscripts. So, and I'm very much looking forward to listening to your lecture. Please, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you for inviting me to this workshop that enabled me to enter a new field of Jewish manuscript studies. Today, I would like to explore the artistic and historical legacy of Jewish decorated manuscripts from 3 Greek islands and answer the question of what they reveal about the communities that produce them. Handwritten books have historically served as an essential tool for worship, education, and the preservation of communal memory. Today, their decorated examples stand as tangible witness to centuries of Jewish presence across Europe, reflecting the creativity of their makers and the taste of their time. Similarly, manuscripts from Greece possess an intriguing legacy, yet their history, production, and ornamentation haven't been studied and have rarely been discussed in scholarly debate. My presentation seeks to fill this gap, highlighting notable examples of Jewish book art from Greece, especially from 3 distant cities of Candia, Corfu, and Rhodes, where vibrant Jewish communities were once present. While these locations produce particularly remarkable examples of decorated manuscripts, it is notable that other areas in Greece, such as Thessaloniki, also created them. I will examine the visual and artistic features of manuscripts from these locales, which will enable me to discuss important information regarding religious devotion, spirituality, communal identity, and the interreactions among diverse groups living in the same locations during the early modern and modern periods. I would also emphasize some customs typical of the local communities. Jews residing in both the Greek mainland and the islands produced books during the medieval period, as is evidenced in scribal notes. Such an example is a prayer book dating back to 1426, which Aron Hasson showed us in the previous session, whose colophon indicates its place of origin as Rhodes. 2 more examples from Chios and Thebes are shown in this slide. Other manuscripts can be attributed to their geographical area and cultural context based on paleographic features, as those from this region represent a Byzantine style of Hebrew handwriting. However, it is noteworthy that in this area, remained somewhat outside the mainstream of manuscript decoration. In contrast to the hundreds of decorated or illuminated codices from Ashkenazi and Sephardi milieus, no decorated examples from Greece have been identified until the 16th century. As Ilona Steimann, the next speaker in this session, says, I quote, Hebrew manuscripts produced in the Byzantine Empire or on its former territories were almost never decorated. It seems that the Byzantine Jews deliberately avoided decoration in their manuscripts and consequently didn't create any illustrative tradition. End of quote. Notably, a significant period for Jewish book art in Greece began at the end of the 17th century in Corfu. Here, over the next several decades, a significant number of decorated handwritten books were produced, which outnumbered those from Candia and Rhodes. This trend, to some extent, was a consequence of the fact that the Hebrew printing emerged in Corfu only in the late 19th century. Simultaneously, a revival of manuscript production was observed in a different part of Europe, in German-speaking regions, where in cities like Vienna, Prague, or Hamburg, scribe artists created hundreds of lavishly decorated religious manuscripts. Many of these were luxurious volumes commissioned by affluent Jewish patrons, including court Jews. Nevertheless, as evidenced by stylistic differences and preferences for particular motifs, it seems likely that these movements in Greece and Germanic lands emerged and developed independently. The earliest decorated manuscripts from Greece that I'm familiar with were produced in Candia, modern-day Heraklion, the capital of Crete. This area has had a significant Jewish population since the Byzantine era. 4 ornate volumes from this location have been identified, all created during the Venetian rule of the island. These include 2 Passover Haggadot, a Machzor for Rosh Hashanah, and a copy of Pirkei Avot tractate. And in this place, I would like to express my gratitude to Ilona Steimann for bringing the Letter 2 manuscripts to my attention, and also for sharing her unpublished article with me. Both Haggadot follow the Romaniot rite, reflecting the local communities, predominantly Romaniot population, which consists of Greek-speaking Jews from the Eastern Mediterranean. One of them is part of the collection at the Bibliothèque Nationale de France in Paris and is known as the Spaniolo Haggadah due to the name of its copies, Mattathias ben David Spaniolo. His colophon reveals that he completed the manuscript on July 13th, 1583, as a commission from Leon ben Judah Billy. However, the copies doesn't specify the place of creation, which scholars have inferred based on the personalities mentioned in the scribal note. Interestingly, Spaniolo was not the illustrator of this manuscript. Its visual elements are closely related to another Candia Haggadah known as Chantilly Haggadah, housed in Musée Condé in Chantilly. The artistic model can be traced back further, since as some details in this Haggadot are based on the so-called Brother Haggadah, a 14th century Catalan codex that arrived in Candia by early 15th century at the latest. Each of the Candia Haggadot is richly decorated with approximately 50 images, skillfully painted in a wide range of colors. In addition to illustrations directly related to the Passover celebrations and the Haggadah's narrative, such as the Seder table or the slaying of the Passover lamb, many images draw on biblical stories like the three angels at Abraham's table or extra biblical sources. It is evident that the artist was familiar with rabbinic commentaries and midrashic interpretations, and the illustrations were intended to enrich the text with additional interpretations. For example, in the margins of the Maggid section, there is a well-executed depiction of an angel that visually represents a rabbinic statement saying about God's direct involvement in the Exodus story. I quote, "Not by the hand of an angel, not by the hand of a seraph, not by the hand of a messenger, but the Holy One, blessed is He, in His glory and Himself brought us of Egypt." End of quote. Another fascinating detail appears just above the angel. The great power of God declared in the text is illustrated by an outstretched arm grasping a sword, referencing the verse that speaks of God's mighty hand and an outstretched arm. Although these Haggadot were intended to serve as liturgical guides for the Seder, their narrative scenes reveal some valuable details of the reality of Candia life during the 16th century, such as details of men's clothing. In several scenes, two of which I'm presenting in the slide, Jewish elderly men are depicted wearing a cappuccio. This headdress consists of a band that encircles the head with a long pointed sleeve attached at the top. It gained popularity in Italy during the 15th century and was worn by people of high social status, such as lawyers and physicians. And also, in this case, it is interesting that Rabbi Elia Kapsali, a community leader and historian living in the 16th century, stated that elders wore a cappuccio when attending synagogue, which confirms the accuracy of this depiction. As I have just mentioned, the patron of the Spaniolo Haggadah belonged to the Billy family, a wealthy family known to have been present in Crete as early as the 16th century. Its another member, Moshe ben Judah Billy, created the other two manuscripts from Candia, which are a Maxor for Rosh Hashanah and Pirkei Avot tractate. The Candia origin of the first of these manuscripts should be emphasized, as this festive prayer book is still catalogued as German. One important detail of these volumes is the significantly different handwriting, style, and palette compared to that of the Candia Haggadot. The colors are generally dark, especially in the Maxor, dominated by earth tones, primarily shades of green and brown. Notably, the faces of humans, angels, and mermaids are characterized by dark coloring, adding a striking detail to the illustrations. The Maxor dates back to 1614 and consists of 74 lavishly decorated paper leaves featuring charming albeit naive artwork. The decorations typically appear in the lower and outer margins, with 12 folios showcasing complete decorative patterns like those three I'm displaying in the slide. Common elements include floral borders inhabited by real and fantastic animals and mythological creatures such as mermaids, winged dragons, and unicorns. Battle scenes and marine themes accompany these images, yet the elements within this composition don't connect or relate to the text they adorn. The Pirkei Avot manuscript, created by Moshe Billy a year later in 1615 or 1616, shares stylistic and codicological affinities with the prayer book, suggesting his coherent artistic approach. It is also adorned in a naive yet vibrant style, employing a limited palette of red, blue, green, and yellow ochre. As Ilona Steimann has pointed out, its visual vocabulary features a rich interplay of artistic traditions. It draws heavily from Cretan folk art and urban landscapes. Some patterns resemble densely packed embroideries with floral decorations, human figures, fantastic creatures, including, again, double-tailed mermaids. The fortress motif, likely inspired by the Venetian fortifications, further situates the manuscript within its local context. And notably, it also appears in the Maxor. Furthermore, Billy's symmetrical carpet decorations seem to be influenced by Ottoman textiles, while the depiction of the celestial sphere appears as a borrowing from European printed books, especially those printed by Abraham ibn Usk in Ferrara in the 16th century. This imagery, along with the Wheel of Fortune, demonstrated on another page, highlights Moshe Billy's engagement with philosophical and scientific concepts from the early modern world. Therefore, this cross-cultural artistic synthesis reveals not only his creativity, but also his interests. In contrast to Candia, where only a handful of manuscripts have been identified, a prominent center for the production of handwritten books emerged in Corfu during the late 17th and 18th centuries. The Jewish presence in the city has been documented here since the Middle Ages, reaching its peak in the 1860s, when the local community numbered nearly 6,000 people. The Jews of Corfu developed a unique religious rite and customs of their own. Notable works from this period include small liturgical manuscripts written on paper and richly illustrated with biblical scenes. Typical, albeit quite mysterious for them, is emphasis on the Samson story, which was more visible in European than Jewish art. The relatively large number and depictions of scenes that are rare in Jewish art set Corfu's manuscripts apart from those produced simultaneously in Central Europe. Notably, the earliest known example of these motifs appear in Jacob Farrell's self-made prayer book from 1692. In addition to other decoration, his manuscript features a cycle of 9 full-page biblical illustrations, and 3 of them depict scenes of Samson's extraordinary strength. They are Samson battling a lion with his bare hands, carrying the gates of the city of Gaza, and using the jawbone of a donkey against the Philistines. This prayer book may have inspired another artist around 1760 who created a booklet comprising a selection of prayers and piyutim recited on Sabbath afternoons between Passover and Shavuot, illustrated with similar themes, including the scenes of Samson carrying the gates of Gaza and raising a donkey's jawbone. Additionally, a Machzor for Passover, Shavuot, and Sukkot from 1709 revisits the Samson theme and portrays him fighting a lion, but it also adds a rare depiction of his parents sacrificing to God upon being promised they will have a child. The already mentioned volume from around 1760, beyond its artistic appeal, serves as a significant testament to the complex social structure of the community, as it includes Hebrew poems alongside those written in Judeo-Greek and Judeo-Spanish. The region's stormy history has contributed to a dynamic Jewish experience. Over the years, many Jews from various backgrounds, particularly those from the Italian and Iberian peninsulas, settled in Corfu. This influx of newcomers led to social diversity, which resulted in disagreements and conflicts among different groups within the community and created religious tensions. One notable dispute regarding the social structure in Corfu is reflected in a lavishly illustrated manuscript titled Università Italiana della Sinagoga Corfiota Aborigine contro Università della Sinagoga Corfiota Greca. It was created in 1674 in Venice, and the text is written in Latin, Italian, and the local dialect. This document arose from a disagreement between the smaller Greek community, which sought seniority privileges, and the larger, more diverse Italian community that included Iberian refugees. Delegates from both groups presented their cases before the Venetian Council, ultimately leading the Dutch to recognize the historical significance of both communities. The booklet contains 14 pages which are richly decorated in Italian style. Its colorful border showcases a stylistic relationship with the borders within another manuscript, the Harrison Miscellany, which dates back to around 1720. Also, the stunning manuscript from the Braginski collection reflects the customs of Corfu, intertwined with Italian art, which is understandable as the island was a protectorate of the Republic of Venice for 4 centuries until 1797. It contains prayers, blessings, and poems for weddings from various authors, including Rabbi Eliezer de Mordo, a member of a prominent family in the city. This miscellany is an outstanding example of book art due to its unique cycle of 60 high-quality and full-page gouache illustrations from Genesis, likely painted by a non-Jewish artist trained in Venice. Also, the illustrations don't directly correlate with the text. The depictions of wedding scenes based on biblical stories, along with frequent portrayals of women, suggest that this impressive manuscript may have been commissioned as a wedding gift for a bride. And this manuscript introduces us to wedding art represented by decorated marriage contracts, which are the most numerous among illuminated manuscripts from Greece. These contracts were created in both Romaniot and Sephardi communities, with many produced during the late 18th, 19th, and even the first half of the 20th centuries. The richness of their ornamentations and the stories behind these unique legal documents offer valuable insights into social practices and local customs. As observed in previous manuscripts, the influence of Italian aesthetics is no less evident in many ketubot from Corfu. For instance, a contract prepared in 1725 for the wedding of Moses Matzah and Stamu Vivante, two members of the Corfu Romaniot community, showcases an artistic vocabulary similar to that found in Italy. This ketubah features a lavishly decorated border adorned with satyrs, reclining female nudes, winged cherubs, zodiac signs, and two biblical scenes. Beyond reflecting the tastes of the local Jewish community, it also provides insights into its marriage customs. Notably, in the lower part of the document, on the left side, a note unique to Romaniot marriage contracts appears. It was customary for the groom to provide a signed note attesting to the bride's virginity, which in this case was added 5 days after the wedding. Another significant aspect of Romaniot contracts is the method of dating, which communities rooted in the Byzantine Jewish tradition followed. Traditionally, these documents were dated using a system that began with the year of the destruction of the Jerusalem temple in 70 CE. However, rabbinical sources indicate a different traditional date for this event due to that 67 or 68 years should be added to this count. For example, in the Corfu ketubah from the Gross Family Collection, currently on display, the wedding day is recorded as 1763, which actually corresponds to 1830. This document further reiterates the date as the year counted from the creation of the world. Another notable center for the production of decorated marriage contracts was in Rhodes. According to the Jewish Museum in New York, Rhodes, and here I quote, became an important center for ketubah illumination and Jewish ceremonial art production. Wealthy members of Jewish community invested considerable sums in weddings, resulting in many exquisite examples of ketubot. End of quote. The museum houses a magnificent example prepared in 1843 for the wedding of Chaim Yosef Tarika and Joya Israel, both descendants of prominent Jewish families in Rhodes. Several significant details about this contract stand out. First, it is written on paper, unlike most Sephardi and Italian ketubot, which are typically made of parchment. Additionally, its impressive size measures over 80 centimeters in height and 54 centimeters in width, and the decorations that cover most of the surface dominating the text. The main motif, which is unique to this contract, features a building with tall, slender, minaret-like towers, and lastly, the majority of the text is inscribed in a minuscule cursive script.
I'm sorry, is it still this slide?
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't show it. But I can see a different picture. So there is no connection, I think. Because I...
Oh, we had this problem earlier. Maybe it's because of...
Thank you.
No, I had this problem earlier.
Because I'm changing the slides and I can see...
Yeah, it goes on and on,
Yeah.
but they're not.
Yeah.
So we had this problem earlier. Maybe I have to start it again.
Yeah, and I can see different pictures on the screen.
Maybe I'm able to close this. And now? Put it together. Oh, that's not. Yeah,
This is a signal of lucky.
That's so tricky. So now, just...
Okay, so the last proper picture, I think it was the Harrison Miscellany.
So now we can see them all again, it's good?
Yes! This one was the last? No.
No.
Yeah. Now we come closer, right? You've seen this, this.
Yeah, we are very close.
Yes.
So it was the last one.
Yes, this was the last one. So
yeah. So this is yeah, but still, I think it cuts. Yeah, it cuts another slide. It includes another slide. I don't know why.
Yeah. And if you go further,
I don't know.
Like this.
This one is good, but the previous one is.
No. Oh no.
Okay.
Wow.
So this is the ketubah of 1725 with this very Italian border. The next one, I choose this ketubah because it has, the date is repeated, it's given twice, according to two systems. And it's also decorated in very different style, and also the palette is very different than the previous one. And this is this beautiful ketubah, is very large, from Jewish Museum in New York. And I think it's also related to two of ketubah that Aron showed us before. We can see the same proportions. I think at least 60% of the surface is covered with decorations, and the rest is dedicated for the text, which basically is the most important thing because it is still a legal document and not only a beautiful manuscript. And I don't know if it's visible, but the handwriting is different. I mean, there is a square and cursive script in this ketubah. And let's try. Okay. Another magnificent ketubah from Rhodes is adorned with a lithographed border that has been colored with watercolor. While the border is printed on paper, the verses and decorative elements in the upper and lower registers are hand-painted. And significantly, the same design can be found in 3 contracts from different and distant places: Rhodes, Dalaman in Turkey, and the United States, all prepared for weddings that took place over a span of 17 years. And the final ketubah I choose is noteworthy, not for its artistic value, but for its historical significance, and also today's day of remembrance, as this contract commemorates the wedding of Abraham and Esther, which occurred on May 26, 1944 in Corfu, which means just 2 weeks before the deportation of local Jews, which began on June 9th. Therefore, I see it symbolically as the last witness to the 700-year presence of the Jewish community in Corfu, and more generally of all Jewish communities in Greece. And to conclude, Jewish decorated manuscripts from Rhodes, Corfu, and Candia exhibit a fusion of artistic influences, and they also facilitated the transmission of faith, preservation of liturgical traditions and local customs, and also reinforced communal pride and continuity. Their visual and textual narratives enable unheard Jewish life amid stormy political and changing social landscapes. And therefore, I think that the study of them contributes to a deeper understanding of the diversity of Jewish communities in Greece and their complex history. Thank you.
Yes. It's so beautiful. Thank you. Actually, I have a few questions. I'll try to keep it short. First of all, do you know who those painters were? And was there like some kind of a school that made the 3 islands you're talking about especially, I don't know, important or significant in this sense? My other question is, I saw birds and flowers in Jewish ornamentation, but depictions of real life person in prayer books, and even this erotic depiction is very unique. Was it well accepted everywhere?
Okay, so starting from the first question, in general, we don't know the names of the artists who created the manuscripts. So in general, even if there are notes, there are the notes by scribes and not by artists. sometimes we can have like we can have signatures or something that makes that we can recognize the artist. For example, in this Harrison miscellany, there are initials. On some pages there are initials, but so far we weren't able to connect those initials with an artist. So this is very difficult question. In many cases, I think like I showed a prayer book created by Jacob Farrell. I think it was created for himself. It was very widespread trend in Jewish book culture to produce books for your personal use. And I think this is the case. And I think we can say that he was also the illuminator. He was also the artist. And I think in many cases it was also like this. But in general, it is very, very difficult as there are no signatures. I know this is not related to our presentation, but this is a magnificent example of co-production and correlation of Jewish and European art when we have printed border for Esther scrolls that is signed by non-Jewish artist, and the text was written by Jewish scribe who also signed them. So, but this is a real exception. And the other question was
depiction of humans.
Like naked.
Everything that's Besel Tmuna, everything that's depicting actual things that might be mistaken for gods or being worshipped as such.
Okay, so I can tell you that I studied Esther scrolls, decoration of Esther scrolls, and we can find some even more naked depictions. One is really, I think, even from the point of view of us living in the 21st century, I think is, yeah, somehow, yeah. So this is in the scroll itself, and it accompanies the book of Esther, which is still a biblical book. Yeah. And it's read during the holiday. So I can't explain this because this is not so rare as we could expect.
But in Esther and Ron, the name of God is not inside. In the whole story,
agree,
no name of
agree,
God. Maybe that's why they.
Yeah, but this is. I think this is not the explanation why you need to show like unclothed female figures. You can show like 1 million other motifs, but not this one. Even that's true. There is no name of God, but
it's no explanation.
Yeah.
Well, there's a trick, the Hamelech thing on the Esther scroll, which indicates like God is still there.
Yeah, and also in some scrolls, but mainly from Ashkenaz, there are letters that are indicated, that are somehow highlighted to show the presence, like symbolical presence of God in the narrative. But as for the depictions, it is weird, and I can't explain this.
And you also didn't find any rabbinical writings condemning it, or that, like, was there any debate on that?
Honestly, I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. And I can just tell you that, for example, also this motif that I stressed in my presentation, I mean mermaids. it also appears in Esther scrolls, and it also appears like in Hanukkah lamps from Italy. And I can't explain this. Why mermaids? And they're always like with double tails. I don't know why.
It was like freestyle of the artist. It was no meaning inside. It was like the artist did what they want. Something like
Sometimes
this.
I think so. Sometimes I think there was no plan. It was just to let's say create something beautiful. And we need to remember that in many cases it was just an object, just object for trade, and it wasn't. Sometimes it was a work of art, for sure. But sometimes it was like to finish it as soon as possible and sell, because those people need to earn money, to just a simple economy of production manuscripts. But sometimes they are absolutely beautiful, and sometimes the decorations are well planned, and sometimes I'm absolutely sure that the ornamentation was clear for the people, let's say in the 17th, 18th centuries, but now we can't understand, we can't interpret, we can't deep, we can't enter deep enough to understand the meaning. So I think it's a very complex issue, and this presentation, it was just to notice some important issues.
It's not really a question, it's simply a comment to thank you, a comment of gratitude. The issue with Candia, for someone, I've studied a lot on the Jewish history of Greece, but the issue of Candia that you brought up was really, in my case, excellent, because it opened up so many things which I didn't know. And what I appreciated is the fact that you bring out that the local kind of imperial context also plays a role. If I can understand, if you understand what I mean. In other words, we see in Islamic art the use of winged creatures, mythological creatures, and it's not unusual, I think, that would be absorbed by Jewish artists, if they were Jewish, that made them, or in general in artistic environment. I think that's very, very important. And the use of minarets in the ketubah, these kind of Islamic motifs. And in Greek folklore, we see the mermaid quite a lot. And in the island folklore, even to this day. So, yeah.
Yeah, and in my presentation, I wanted to avoid words such as borrowings.
Yeah.
Because I think it was not only for the Jews in Greece, but in general. I think it was typical for Jewish art to use everything they saw like around them. Yeah, in the streets, in books, and in the buildings, like decorations of the buildings, like everywhere. So that's why I try to avoid of using word borrowings, because in this case I think it was natural for them to use the motifs that they know.
They were open for other cultures at that time.
Yeah.
Well, the use of the celestial globe, which was taken directly from, or taken, the influence from the West was important. And Greek was really a kind of bridge, literally,
Exactly.
About the Finnish occupation in the middle of the East and
West.
Exactly.
And also,
Grecha was born there, and overstating it. And the famous Spanish artist, Greek artist.
And also we need to remember about merchants who appeared in islands, and later they traveled, and they can, and also the motifs, the decorations and books traveled together with them. And as I've just mentioned the example of this brother Haggadah, that was a Sephardi manuscript that was in here in Greece, and it is also important.
Is there a difference between the way that it was illustrated in the big cities and in the islands? In the islands was more freedom than in the cities, or it's all over so eclectic?
I don't know, because I didn't compare this. I choose those three cities because they are very distant, so it was like the first thing, and the other that it was my personal attitude. I found those manuscripts are especially captivating as also highlights of Jewish book art. So I don't know, and this is also something that we need to stress, that there is no serious research on Jewish decorated manuscript from Greece, and this is the new field that we can enter. So I'm sorry, I can.
Sorry, there's one person. Sorry.
Good starting point.
Question of gratitude. We're very grateful person.
Yeah, I think it's just a starting point, and to show that
There's a lot to it.
and also the quality of the depiction. Sometimes we can say they are naive, and they don't fit our sense of aesthetics today, but
Maybe at that time.
yeah, I think at the time it must be beautiful.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It was really fantastic. I have one question and one small comment about the mermaid. I'm from America, which is a relatively new country, and so our folklore is much younger than the folklore of Greece or Germany or any country in Europe. But I did a small research in a library of a whaling town in America, and all the towns, all the locations that are islands, even in North America, and or even a peninsula or an isthmus, they all have a lot of folklore and many superstitions about mermaids, and all the art from the sailors always included, mermaids. So I think maybe you brought it to me that it's maybe universal for it's Corfu and Rhodes and Crete. These are all seafaring people, and Jews or non-Jews, and so there's always the influence of the sea motif. But my question was, you mentioned the inclusion in the very interesting prayer book. You showed the illustration of 1692 with Samson, and you said, I think you said it also had the Hebrew, and then it had Judeo-Greek and Judeo-Spanish. And I was wondering, did you see in your studies any other manuscripts where there were two or more languages, not just the Hebrew text?
Okay, so I think your question relates to another manuscript.
Okay.
From 1760.
Okay.
I think so.
I think so.
Yeah, so in general, there are manuscripts that join different languages. But as for Greece, this was also this manuscript about the debate.
Okay.
so it was also written in different languages, and it's also in Latin alphabet, not in Hebrew alphabet. And if there are any others, for now I don't remember. Like in general, yes, like in from Europe, for example, but from Greece I don't remember now. And here, if I may ask a question, if you know any reason, any explanation for this Samsung team that was so beloved.
Wild guess. I think it probably has to do with some feeling of being persecuted, because Samsung is the raw power, it's like the golem.
Agree.
Yeah, just a brutal, violent Jew who you know just makes justice by using power. So my guess would be that it has to do it has something to do with the state of being persecuted.
My other proposition was also that it's a kind of influence of the myth of Hercules.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think it's something really special, and it was also, I didn't mention this in my presentation, but there was a wonderful exhibition in New York. I think it was in 2023, at the end of the year, at the JTS in New York. And it was like two institutions, I mean JTS and Columbia University joined, and they gathered manuscripts, not only manuscripts, also printed books from Corfu. And I was then in New York because of my research trip, and I remember when I entered the library, the JTS library, and I saw all of those manuscripts behind the glass, and I said to myself, I have no idea that in Corfu it was this kind of production of decorated manuscripts. And it was a real discovery for me, and that's why I decided to include Corfu in this presentation. And I think it's really something unusual, even if we have, as I mentioned, even if we are aware of a similar trend in Central Europe, I think it's something absolutely amazing that a similar trend appeared in a different part of Europe.
Yes, I think it's possible that is largely a Venetian influence, because the Venetians were very advanced in their printing of illuminated worship books.
Yeah, for sure.
So
absolutely,
the printers were many from Venice.
Absolutely, but still, I think it's very important to show this, that even in the age of print, handwritten books were still produced in Jewish culture.
I think it was. I'm asking that because I don't know, but was Corfu wealthier? I mean, would there have been more means for people to be able to afford this kind of work?
For sure.
So this would explain it also.
He did this from the rest of the Greek world because it was a feudal society. It had landlords and it had people with large estates, which if you cross the border into the rest of Greece, it was under Ottoman rule. It wasn't that kind of system of land ownership. There was the kind of aristocracy which developed there, and with an element of wealthy Jews as well that did, and they could have been patrons of these kinds of items.
Yes.
But getting back to your point about you were surprised, if I was correct, when you went into the JTS. I think that's got to do with the anthropology and the sociology of Jewish studies. In other words, that it's Sephardic items and Romani items were, in a sense, the poor relatives. How do I put it? It was the poor kind of family members of the Jewish family. They were less studied and less admired and less, and their culture was less kind of considered to be worthy of study, if that makes sense. There was a kind of prejudice there, and that's been around for many years amongst scholars of Jewish studies, I think.
Compared to Ashkenazi.
Yeah, definitely so. And if I can make a criticism of Israel, and it's got to do with it, that also has to do with the place of Sephardis within Israeli society, and the fact that after 48, Israel became the center of so much study of the Jewish world and Jewish history, that a predominance of Ashkenazic themes and subjects and topics took over. And only, I think, in the 1980s and 1990s, things changed a bit more. That's not an absolute opinion, but I think that was a general tendency. And now I'm going to say nothing.
I totally understand. It's really hard to stop here. But we have other chances to continue talking about the thing. I'm very glad that art.
Coffee break.
Yes, that art attracts so much attention. I'm really happy about it. And so we move on now.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dagmara. And our next speaker's name was already mentioned by Dagmara several times. I don't know if it was by purpose but it fits perfect actually. And Ilona, I don't know, can you hear me? Can you see us? So give us a sign.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, fine, perfect. So I will shortly introduce you, and it's really nice to see you and that you join us via Zoom today. And just another private remark, Ilona and me, actually our paths has already crossed many years ago at Krakow, and where we found out that we have another mutual interest besides art, and that was Christian Hebraism, when we were talking about Christian Kabbalah and reception of Jewish manuscripts and books by Christian humanists during mostly the Renaissance. So this is one of Ilona's research interests, but her research expands beyond that. She graduated from the Hebrew University in Jerusalem with a dissertation that won an award, congrats for this, on the Hebrew book collection of Hartmann Schede. So Hebrew books, Hebrew manuscripts are actually like a resurfacing topic in her research. So she has since then worked and led various research projects at various universities across Germany. I noticed that actually you went from the north to the south and then you ended up in the very west. So you're now located at the University of Münster, if I'm right. And those research projects mainly focused also on book production, the reception of Hebrew manuscripts and books among Christians, matters of book. I said it already, like production and transition and anything that's connected to the materiality, but also the fabrication and the reception and the transfer of books. And this, I will only mention the one monograph because I read it, and it's actually comprises also the this topic. It's called Jewish Book, Christian Book, Hebrew Manuscripts and Transition Between Jews and Christians in the Context of German Humanism. And this is only one part, and I saw that you wrote many articles, like micro studies, but also on a larger scale, and your like similar like most of us, like covering a larger scale, but the center core is actually the books. So now the floor is open, and I'm happy to hear your lecture for today. And sorry for the delay, and thank you for waiting.
Yeah, thank you, Dana. Thank you for inviting me. Sorry that I couldn't come in person. Do you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Perfect. Okay, I have to share a screen, so let's see how it works.
Yes.
Is it good?
Yes. Yes. Super.
Moment. Yes. In 1933, when Umberto Passuto was appointed by the Vatican Library to compile a descriptive catalogue of its Hebrew holdings, he established that the majority of Hebrew section in the Fonda Fugheriana originated from Venetian Crete. These manuscripts were collected by Ulrich Fugger, who was a member of the prominent banking family, best known as the founders of the world's oldest public housing complex, the Fuggerei Notebook. An inventory compiled around 1554 by Ulrich's librarian Martin Gersman provides the earliest evidence of 154 Cretan Hebrew manuscripts within the library. However, Fugger was not the one who bought the Cretan codices in Crete, as in 1541, when the first manuscripts were acquired there, Ulrich was only 15 years old. Before discussing the original buyer of the manuscripts in Crete and the circumstances of their sale, let us briefly examine their later history and their eventual transfer to the Vatican. Unlike other members of his family, Ulrich was not much interested in trade and banking, but spent most of his time reading. From a young age, he appreciated learning, supported authors and printers financially, and passionately collected books. In an attempt to create a universal library that would meet the needs of humanist scholarship, a desiderium of many book collectors of the time, Ulrich invested considerable energy and time and money in bringing together books in various languages, including Hebrew. His book collection grew significantly in the 1550s after he returned from his studies in Bologna to his hometown, Augsburg. As a result of the economic difficulties of the following years and his conversion to Protestantism, Ulrich accepted an invitation from the Palatine Prince Friedrich III and moved to Protestant Heidelberg in 1564. His book collection followed him and was deposited in the Palatine Library, located in the Heiliggeistkirche in Heidelberg. The books arrived in boxes and chests, whose contents were inventoried a few years later. In accordance with Ulrich's last will and testament, his book collection, including the Hebrew volumes, became the property of the Palatine Library after his death in 1584. During the 30 Years' War, the Palatine Library became a war trophy when Heidelberg fell to the troops of the Duke Maximilian of Bavaria in 1622, thereby depriving the Protestants of one of their most important intellectual attributes. Presented by Maximilian as a sign of piety to Pope Gregory, the Palatine books were loaded into 60 wagons and transported to the Vatican. While this later history of the Fugger's library is quite well reconstructable due to the multiple book inventories compiled in Heidelberg and the Vatican, how Fugger obtained such a vast collection of Cretan Hebrew codices remains a mystery. In what follows, I will discuss what we do know, leaving, however, many questions open for further research. One of the most striking peculiarities in Fulger's Cretan volumes are the acquisition notes, written by an anonymous Christian buyer of the manuscripts in Crete, which allow us to date the acquisitions to 1541 until 43. Written in a crude script in the beginning or end of the manuscripts obtained, these notes usually include the date of the acquisition, the price of the manuscript, and an astrological sign of a planet, zodiac, or an alchemical symbol. Sometimes the signs were made up. For example, in the notes that begin with the letters PM surmounted by a cross, an abbreviation that apparently stood for the date of the acquisition, Primo Mai, 1st of May. The use of the astrological and planetary signs also seems to be random, with no correlation to the actual planets and stars associated with the given dates. Rather, the buyer assigned a different symbol to each group of manuscripts acquired on the same date from the same seller. The symbols were therefore likely used as identifying marks for such groups and may have served as a key for record-keeping of the acquisitions. Apparently, the buyer also possessed a corresponding list in which the groups were represented by these symbols, followed by the number of manuscripts acquired and their prices. Hebrew manuscripts marked by similar symbols, each one standing for a shelf mark of a specific volume, were also found in other sections of the Palatine Library that did not derive from Fulger's collection, and were referred to by these symbols in Heidelberg inventories, reflecting a common practice of the time. Another peculiarity of the acquisition notes is the fact that they are sometimes encrypted. In many of them, the buyer of the manuscripts encoded the names of the Jewish sellers, and sometimes did the same thing to hide the price as well. Although the language of the inscription is mostly Latin, with some Greek interpolations, the buyer substituted some of the Latin letters for Hebrew and Greek ones, deliberately mixing up the three alphabets in the wording and Hebrew vocalization. This method of encryption is not particularly sophisticated and could be potentially deciphered by anyone who was acquainted with Latin, Greek, and Hebrew alphabets. By that point, European cryptographers had already developed much more complicated polyalphabetic systems of encoding to safeguard secret information. However, although simple substitution of the letters seems naive and ineffective, deciphering the encrypted words requires considerable effort. Hence, rather than render the information entirely illegible, the applied technique of encoding made the encrypted words simply less easily recognizable. As to why the Christian buyer would have felt it necessary to veil some details in secrecy, especially the names of the Jewish sellers, I will return later on. Judging by the acquisition notes, many manuscripts were acquired from the head of the Candia Jewish community, referred to by his official title in Italian, Condestabulo. At the time of the acquisition, the head of the community was Eliyahu ben Elkanah Kapsali, mentioned by Dagmara as well, a prominent rabbi, historian, and author of Chronicles of Venice and other well-known works. Remarkably, the name of Eliyahu Kapsali was never explicitly mentioned in the acquisition notes, although the Christian buyer must have known the name of the Condestabulo. According to extant inscriptions, Kapsali sold a total of 21 manuscripts. In addition, 8 codices that the Christian buyer obtained in Candia bear ownership notes written by Eliyahu Kapsali or other members of his family, although they do not mention Condestabulo as the seller. This suggests that these manuscripts could also have come from Kapsali's bookshelf. while it is unknown what size Kapsali's private book collection was, judging by an average size of learned Jewish libraries of the time, he must have sold around a quarter of his books. Among other Jewish sellers was the cantor of the Candiote synagogue, referred to as Psaltes. Besides 7 manuscripts that he sold on the 1st of May of 5042, he gave the Christian buyer a compilation of biblical commentaries and Kabbalistic texts for free a week later, in the presence of Azzalino, Thomas Sacchellani, and Battista Omea, his Battista. Their Italian names suggest that the anonymous Christian buyer may have arrived to Crete from Italy, possibly from Venice, and brought with him his associates who helped him with the acquisitions. All in all, the extant acquisition notes mention not only the specific manuscript in which they appear, but also other codices that were acquired on the same occasion. This seems to indicate that the anonymous buyer obtained 67 Hebrew manuscripts in Candia. However, this figure does not actually reflect the total number of the manuscripts acquired. Many more Hebrew volumes are sure to have been obtained from the Candiote Jewish community, even though their respective acquisition notes have been lost due to the removal of the fly leaves and manuscript bindings. In addition to the acquisition notes, the Candiote Hebrew manuscripts feature running Hebrew numbers from 1 to 175 at the beginning of each codex. These numbers were added to the volumes shortly after their acquisition in Crete by the Christian buyer or one of his associates. The Hebrew numbers run with lacunae, indicating that some manuscripts acquired have not come down to us. On the basis of the Hebrew numbers, then, at least 175 manuscripts must have been obtained in Candia. This extended group contains the texts authored by Cretan Jews, the mention of Crete in colophons as the place of copying, and the inscriptions of the previous Jewish owners who belonged to the Candiote Jewish community, all disclose the Cretan provenance of the entire group that bears the Hebrew numbers. It remains unknown whether all 175 manuscripts were acquired within the 3-year period cited in the acquisition notes, or if the duration of the anonymous buyer's activities in Candia extended beyond this time span. As to the content of the acquired manuscripts, around 2/3 of the Cretan collection contain biblical commentaries and works on philosophy and science. The latter mainly represent the rationalist tradition of philosophical disciplines, such as Hebrew translations of and commentaries on Averroes and Aristotle, as well as treatises on medicine, astrology, and astronomy. Kabbalistic texts constitute another large segment of the Cretan collection. Some of them appear in several copies and variations. The thematic scope of the Hebrew manuscript that were acquired in Candia greatly resembles other Christian Hebraica collections of the time, thereby revealing the same mindset and scholarly interests behind the collecting. In contrast to earlier periods, granting Christian access to Jewish books was not rare in the 16th century. As there are ample examples of Jewish-Christian cooperation in connection with books in Italy, it is likely that the situation was not much different in Crete. Most Candiote Jews were involved in business deals with their Christian neighbors. They regularly interacted with both local Greeks and Venetians, providing medical services, selling goods, and giving them loans. These daily activities may also have included the book trade. Jewish scholars and doctors needed to consult up-to-date non-Jewish professional literature and are sure to have opened some Latin and vernacular books The circulation of books in both directions was part of a general intellectual exchange that took place between Jews and Christians in Crete and elsewhere. The effect of the extensive cultural exchange clearly became of concern for Jews to the point that it was addressed in the rabbinic response. Around the same time that Hebrew manuscripts were acquired in Crete, the question was posed to the Venetian rabbi Eliyahu Menachem Halfan whether Jews may instruct Christians in Hebrew. His response was that it is permitted for a Jew to teach Hebrew to a Gentile, as the language and Hebrew books were supposed to assist the Christian in understanding the meaning of the Holy Scripture, but oral tradition, and especially Kabbalah. Whether Candiote Jews were aware of the ban or not is unknown. Yet we cannot entirely rule out the possibility that they might have preferred not to be named openly in relation to the sale to a Christian of their books, many of which were Kabbalistic works. They therefore remained either unnamed or their names were veiled in the acquisition notes. The Kabbalistic books they sold included many copies of the Zohar, its Hebrew translation and excerpts, Sfirot and Merkava literature, as well as Kabbalistic polemics that the Candiote scholar Michael ben Shabtai Cohen Balbo formulated in 1466 against Moshe ben Shmuel Cohen Ashkenazi. Eliyahu Kapsari himself sold two Kabbalistic manuscripts, one including an incomplete copy of Sefer Pliyah, Sefer Yitzra, and extracts from the Zohar, and the second one, the Hebrew translation of parts of the Zohar. The esoteric content of the manuscripts neither prevented the members of the Candiote Jewish community nor its condestabulo from selling the manuscripts to the Christian buyer. However, as has been already mentioned, the Jewish sellers may not have felt comfortable to be named openly in connection with these transactions. Why would Eliyahu Kapsari and other Candiote Jews have wanted to get rid of their manuscripts in the first place? Manuscripts were undoubtedly an expensive commodity, as the prices paid for them by the Christian buyer demonstrate. According to the acquisition notes, about half of the manuscripts cost between 2 and 3 Cretan ducats per volume. The most expensive volumes that the Christian buyer acquired for 3 ducats are usually those that have a large number of quires, around 400 folioes each, suggesting that the prices were not estimated on the basis of the manuscript's content, but in accordance with their material characteristics. Extra qualities, such as the use of parchment as a writing material and illumination, undoubtedly increased their value. While most manuscripts were written on paper, an illuminated siddur with 396 folios was made of parchment and cost 9 ducats together with another unidentified manuscript. Depending on who the seller was, the prices could be elevated or reduced. The country, for example, being more cooperative than others, sold the Christian buyer 7 manuscripts for just 6 ducats and even promised to give him 1 manuscript for free. 2 other currencies mentioned in the acquisition notes, Mochinigo, which is a Venetian silver coin, originally valued at 1 lira, and Perperon, namely a Cretan unit of account that was originally a Byzantine coin, were used to express the prices of cheaper manuscripts. The cheapest of these was a paper codex with 132 folios containing poems, verses, and arithmetic and medical material, which cost 2 peperi, equivalent to about a quarter of a ducat. All in all, the Jews around 87 ducats for their manuscripts, as follows from 58 codices that mention the prices. These are only a third of the acquired group, suggesting that he must have paid around 3 times as much in reality. Roughly speaking, That means 260 ducats, which was a fortune in Cretan terms. The economic reasons for selling books are therefore obvious. Venice's war against the Turks that ended in 1540 led to a rise in Jewish taxes in Crete and worsened relations between the Cretan Jews and their Christian neighbors, who suspected that the Jews were harboring Turks in the Jewish quarter, a situation that certainly affected local Jewish businesses. Cretan Jewry must have already been experiencing economic difficulties for a while, not only because of the war and related matters, but in view of the arrival of poor Iberian Jews en masse after the expulsion from Spain, which continued well into the 16th century. These factors, together with the need to ransom kidnapped Jewish community, to sell some of its property. How the Jewish community raised funds to reoccurring cases of kidnapping and capture is recorded in the regulations of the community, Takanot Candia. Around 1533, two Candiote Jews, Shmuel Roditi and Shemaria Agapoli, were kidnapped in Crete. The community managed to raise 80 ducats to pay ransoms. However, since the sum of money fell a short amount, the community then sold 2 silver finials made with public funds to Eliyahu Kapsali, who paid about 3 ducats for them. Moshe Kazani, who signed the Takana together with other honorable members of the community, stated that it was allowed to sell a Torah scroll to redeem captives, so it must also be acceptable to sell the finials whose role was purely decorative. Redemption of captives is one of the central precepts in Jewish tradition. For the purpose of ransoming Jews or Jewish objects, a Torah scroll, which could otherwise only be sold for Torah study and marriage, and certainly other Jewish books. It is, however, unclear which selection criteria the Jews applied and how they decided which manuscripts to sell and which to keep. They sold both old and freshly produced codices that derived from Candia and other areas of the Jewish settlement, such as Italy, Spain, and Ashkenaz, so the age of the manuscripts and their provenances did not play a significant role in the selection. The Jews not only offered the Christian buyer manuscripts of which the community had several copies, but also some that could not be replaced later. One of the sold copies of Sefer HaPleya, for example, was considered unique. This manuscript was copied in the mid-15th century in Constantinople by Yosef ben Gershon Bonifacio. Around 1462, someone named Rabbi Yaakov brought a copy of its Genesis portion to Candia. On the basis of this copy, he produced 9 quires that contained the first chapter of Genesis for an anonymous Jewish patron, who inscribed them with a lengthy note elucidating the provenance of his copy. The patron described Bonifacio's Sefer HaPleya as one of a kind, because, according to him, it was the only known complete copy of this work. Some years later, Bonifacio's exemplar and another Kabbalistic manuscript he copied in Constantinople were brought to Candia. These 2 codices, as well as the 9 quires, recopied by Yaakov, ended up in the hands of the Christian buyer, though Bonifacio's Sefer HaPleya was regarded as one of a kind. The same holds true for autograph manuscripts, such as Balbo's Kabbalistic compilation, which was unique by virtue of being autographed. The status of rare or unique that must have been attributed to the Kabbalistic codices among Cretan Jews suggests that their Jewish owners would have probably preferred not to sell them, and that they did sell them because the Christian buyer was particularly interested in this kinds of rare works. The buyer then must have first outlined his literary priorities and was then offered the kind of works he was looking for. Each of the protagonists of the story, the Candiote Jews and the anonymous Christian buyer, had their own agenda and goals. As a result of the need for cash in the Candiote Jewish community, its members offered for sale all kinds of texts, including those that traditionally were not supposed to be shared with Christians and those that could not be replaced. Seizing this opportunity, the Christian buyer was able to acquire one of the largest Hebraica collections of the time while he was in Crete. To conclude, Crete was one of the most important Venetian overseas territories. Situated at the crossroads of three continents, the island was a hub for trade and commerce and a key point for acquisition of cultural goods. For Venetian bibliophiles, Crete was an important source of classical Greek and Byzantine literature, and possibly by extension of Hebrew works. It is therefore conceivable that the anonymous Christian buyer of the Hebrew manuscripts from Venice. The choice of the text to acquire was determined by the contemporary Hebraist reading priorities. Similarly to other Hebraists, he was particularly interested in the text on Kabbalah, philosophy and science, and in biblical commentaries, but he also obtained many other texts that Jews were ready to sell. As a rule, however, Hebraica collectors who could afford 175 manuscripts would not themselves travel abroad to obtain books, but would engage their agents, usually experts in the given field of knowledge, to take care of the acquisition on their behalf. This could have been the case with the anonymous buyer. Exactly on whose behalf he acted is impossible to establish. It also remains unknown whether the original initiator of the acquisition was a Hebraist and used the acquired manuscripts for study as many of his contemporaries did. The manuscripts do not reveal any traces of Christian use in the form of marginal annotations, references, or other marks. It is also true that if the reconstruction of the events proposed here is correct, the manuscripts were in his possession only for a limited time, and he may have had no opportunity to study them properly and annotate them. The acquisition of the Cretan group for Ulrich Foger's library marks another turn in the story, one that signals the transition of a Hebrew book to being a collectible artifact in the Nobel library. Hebrew books and Nobel collections whose owners could not read Hebrew did not necessarily serve scholarship per se, but symbolized it, sustaining the intellectual ambitions of their owners. Thank you.
Yes, I just wanted to ask her to close the presentation so that we can see you. So are there any questions for this really exciting presentation of Ilona? It was so fascinating. I think it's one of the presentations we heard today, which we can call it something like a starting point. I guess there's no any research except of yours about this corpus, right?
No, actually there is Casuto made the groundwork for this corpus.
Casuto.
For cataloging.
Yeah.
But it was a part of cataloging, so it's a little bit different, yeah.
Yes. But I think there's a question.
I have a
Can you hear?
Can you hear me? Through the...
No, I think you will have to repeat.
Maybe you can. Yes.
The microphone.
I can also come from the people.
Here's the camera.
Ja, hier ist die Kamera.
Dann ich die Kamera, ne? Hi, I hope you can hear and see me.
Yeah, sure.
You said in your
presentation. Thank you so much for that, by the way. You said that the price for the manuscript was determined mostly by the material it was made of. But then I was interested in knowing, well, because the buyer would want to kind of make sure that he could resell the manuscripts, right? So somehow the content of the manuscript did play a role, right? Because if you then buy like a manuscript, it might be valuable in terms of material, but then if no one wants to read it, then he won't be able to resell it. If you know what I mean?
Yeah, sure. The content was the primary reason for acquiring these volumes, but they could be cheaper or could be more expensive. So those which were like materially parchment with illumination, they were simply more. And again, the buyer didn't buy to resell it. He bought it
for himself,
to use it for himself.
Okay.
I assume we don't know who he was, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I assume he probably died. And that's why Ulrich Fugger could acquire the entire collection in block.
Okay.
That's usually what happened.
All right. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, super.
Yeah, so he didn't want to resell it.
Okay, super.
Thank you for the question.
Other questions? Maybe Assaf? Yes.
No, I cannot see you from here, but maybe you can hear me. One of the receipts that you've shown us was actually not for selling a book, but for selling tapuchei kesef, silver apples. If I roughly translated from the Hebrew, which are probably the rimonim for the Sefer Torah, right? And there it says this was the printed Hebrew page that you've shown us, and there it says that that there's some kind of an apology. They sold it in order to get money to free some Jewish guy from prison. And they said, while it's allowed to even sell a Torah roll in order to free a captive, it is even more so allowed to sell only the rimonim or the tapuchei kesef, because they are just decorative and you don't learn the Torah from them. So I just wanted to say that I found it very, very interesting. Whoops. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Oh, no.
I think it's battery ready from the laptop.
Ah, really?
Ah,
Can you still hear us?
No.
No, now she's gone. Okay.
We have to charge the. Just a moment. Yeah, it takes a lot of energy, this kind of.
For 10 minutes. Yes.
Normalerweise ist das Software jetzt dein Laptop eigentlich sich automatisch wieder in den Song einlassen.
Ich mal gucken, wie es geht.
Genau.
Das zieht immer so viel Strom, das ist so nah. Mal gucken, ob es da noch sicher ist.
They are coming.
Yeah, they're coming. Yes.
Okay.
Sorry.
No problem. I lost you.
Yes, I'm sorry. We just.
No, technology can help.
Yes. So, yeah, there was this question. Did you hear the question of Assaf? or
Part
a
of
remark?
part of it.
It's just it was just a remark, or was there something like a little question?
I was saying that on the printed invoice, the Hebrew printed invoice that you showed us, it was not a manuscript but a rimonim.
Yeah, it was from Takanot Candia.
Right.
From the regulations, yeah.
Right. So it just said there that because you're allowed to sell a Torah scroll to free a captive, even more so, you're allowed to sell rimonim.
But that's why I showed. That's why I showed it.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
So, there are other questions, or yes, Katharina? Oh yes, maybe the last question, because we are.
Hello, thank you so much for your presentation. I was wondering, do you have any sources that tell us about the history of these documents from the time when they arrived in the Vatican Library until Umberto Cassuto came to catalogue them? Do we know whether they were used by anyone? Were they just sitting in a bookshelf? Yeah, I'd be curious to hear from you.
Thank you for the question. The only thing we can judge by is the lack of annotation, so I don't think they were really very actively used. We have several inventories compiled during this time period that you mentioned. Well, they catalog books, right? And just the titles. Well, I don't think we have more than that.
Yes. So then, thank you so much, Ilona. It's such a pity that you're not here with us at Rhodes.
Yeah, I'm also sad about
yes. But yeah, I think if there are any more questions, and everybody looks like a bit tired, and looking forward for the next coffee break. So thank you so much. And I would like to announce to all of you in the Zoom part that we changed our schedule a little bit. So if you'd like to join us this afternoon, I think in a half an hour or hour, I'm not sure, we will have another session. The first session from tomorrow, we shift into this afternoon. So if you'd like to join us here, thank you so much. Thank you.